From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. First, the headlines. OIC condemns growing attacks on Muslims in India. Alarming anti-Muslim attacks spread in France. Child labor rises as starving Afghan families forced to send children to work. Father of Parkland school shooting victim climbs crane near White House in gun control protest. Muslims in Buffalo, New York want to add 2 Muslim holidays to school calendar. Washington, D.C. ends COVID-19 vaccination requirements and mask mandates today. Our top story tonight. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC, said it is concerned over recent public calls for the genocide of Muslims in India's Haridwar district of Uttarakhand. The group condemned reported incidents of harassment of Muslim women on social media. It also condemned the banning of female Muslim students wearing hijab in the state of Karnataka. The OIC said continued attacks on Muslims and their places of worship, anti-Muslim legislation in states, and rising violence against Muslims indicate a growing trend of Islamophobia. India is home to about 200 million Muslims, the third largest number worldwide after Indonesia and Pakistan. The OIC called on the international community to take necessary measures. It specifically called on action from the UN and special procedures of the Human Rights Council, an independent group of human rights experts with mandates to report and advise on human rights. The OIC urged India to ensure the safety, security, and well-being of the Indian Muslim community. The OIC has 57 member countries. A Brussels-based human rights watchdog group warned European Union institutes and member states about attacks against Muslims and the spread of far-right ideas in France. The European Network Against Racism denounced the escalation of attacks against Muslims and civil society organizations who worked against racism and anti-Muslim hatred in France. According to the group, Europe should be concerned by the French government's increasingly divisive discourse and strategies. The group expressed alarm that France dissolved civil society organizations, raided mosques and schools, and closed Muslim-owned businesses under the guise of national security. At least 31 Palestinians were injured by Israeli forces in Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood Sunday. Israeli soldiers attacked a rally by Palestinians protesting Israeli eviction orders against Palestinian families from the occupied East Jerusalem neighborhood. On Monday, Jordan decried Israeli aggression in Sheikh Jarrah. It called Israel's eviction and deportation orders against residents a violation of international and humanitarian laws. Jordanian Foreign Minister spokesperson Haytham Abu al-Faoul said Israel, as an occupying power, is obligated to protect and defend Palestinians' rights in their homes. He added that Israel's practice deepened the occupation and undermines peace. The former head of an influential Turkish Muslim association in Germany was convicted of inciting hatred and condoning crimes in anti-Semitic social media posts. Mustafa Keskin was sentenced to 10 months in prison. Keskin resigned last March as chairman of the Gothenburg branch of DITIB, a Turkish religious group. The sentence was prompted by his social media posts containing insults against Jews and Armenians. He was also ordered to pay a fine of 1,200 euros to a charitable organization. Nearly a fifth of starving families in Afghanistan have been forced to put their children to work as incomes drop over the last 6 months, a survey shows. Save the Children found that 18% of families did so. More than 1 million Afghans are now estimated to be engaged in underage labor. A survey of 1,400 households across 7 of Afghanistan's provinces found 82% of Afghans have lost their income since the former government collapsed. Since the Taliban's takeover last August, a third of families have lost their entire household income and a quarter lost more than half. Families living in cities are the hardest hit. half of the families in the capital city, Kabul, have reportedly lost their entire income. Muslim couples in Singapore can now be married online, as well as conduct a host of other marriage-related matters virtually under new changes to the law. Minister for Social and Family Development, Massago Zulkifli, said that the Registry of Muslim Marriages, Sharia Court, and Islamic Religious Council of Singapore can function online. Zulkifli, who is also minister in charge of Muslim affairs, said Monday's digitalization is key for institutions to provide relevant and effective support to the community. The changes will not replace traditional marriage ceremonies, but they will allow Muslims to use online services when needed, such as during the COVID-19 pandemic. With the new administrative processes, Muslim institutions are better equipped to deliver services effectively without disruptions, officials said. New stories from the United States are coming up after the break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Mr. Speaker, if I decide to wear a turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban, or coming from Bongo land, we can appreciate full well the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks? Racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime. And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Two white men were detained this week after a black FedEx driver in Mississippi accused them of chasing and shooting at him as he tried to drop off a delivery. Gregory Case and his son Brandon Case were arrested Tuesday in connection with the January 24th incident. The elder Case faces a charge of conspiracy, while Brandon's case is charged with shooting into a motor vehicle. DeMonterio Gibson, 24, accused the men of pursuing him because he is black. Gibson's attorneys are asking the men to face federal hate crime charges. The case has drawn comparison to the 2020 killing of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, where 3 white men, including a father and son duo, murdered Arbery, who was black. The father of a teenager killed in a mass shooting 4 years ago at a Florida high school climbed a giant crane near the White House on Monday, urging action against gun violence. 17-year-old Joaquin Oliver was among 17 people killed when a former student opened fire at Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland on February 14, 2018. Atop the crane, Manuel Oliver unveiled a banner with a picture of his slain son. It read, 45,000 people died from gun violence on your watch. He was arrested by police when he climbed down. Joaquin's mother, Patricia, told AFP her pain is everywhere. She urged President Joe Biden to take action. Mazars USA, the Trump Organization's longtime accounting firm, is cutting ties with its company, according to a recent court filing. In it, the firm writes that a decade worth of financial statements of the company could no longer be trusted. It's the beginning of an onslaught of investigations targeting former U.S. President Donald Trump. A U.S. congressional committee is preparing to investigate Trump's handling of his administration's documents. 15 boxes of records have been transferred from his Mar-a-Lago residence. Trump insists that he was under no obligation to hand over any material despite laws requiring him to do so. A personal finance company with naming rights to SOFI Stadium had many commercials during Super Bowl 56 on Sunday. Aside from SOFI's range of financial products and services, the company's role in the lucrative student loan refinancing business drew the most attention and ire. The company will receive a major boost if U.S. President Joe Biden allows the federal student debt repayment moratorium to expire on May 1st. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont tweeted during Sunday's game, "Today would be a good day for the president to cancel student debt." Sanders questioned how SOFI could spend $625 million to rename the LA Rams football stadium when 45 million Americans are drowning in $1.8 trillion in student debt. A proposal from the Buffalo Islamic Cultural Center seeks to add the two sacred Muslim celebrations as school holidays. Buffalo Public Schools enroll about 34,000 students, including roughly 5,000 Muslims. The center president sent a letter to Lovejoy District Council member Brian Bowman about the idea of closing schools on the Muslim holy days of Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. The Buffalo Islamic Cultural Center is using a blueprint from the Coalition of Muslim School Holidays that was adopted by schools in New York City. New York City Public Schools added the two Muslim holidays to its calendar in 2016. Students in cities in Michigan and New Jersey also have those days off. Washington, D.C. is ending its COVID-19 vaccination requirement and mask mandate, its mayor said Monday. Mayor Muriel Bowser said coronavirus cases have dropped more than 90% there. Hospitalizations have also reduced 95% since the peak of the Omicron wave in the capital. The city will end the vaccination requirement to visit indoor venues today. The mandate has been in place since December. As of March 1st, masks will not be required in restaurants, bars, gyms, houses of worship, grocery stores, and government offices. However, masks will still be required in schools, childcare facilities, nursing homes, and on public transport. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Friends, our world is pulling together like never before. We're making huge sacrifices to keep one another safe. Scientists are working non-stop to develop COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. A vaccine will get our economies moving. It will tell our loved ones we're safe again. But we have challenges we must address. Right now, Huge pharmaceutical companies are keeping the vaccine research a secret. They're deciding how many vaccines get made, how much to charge for them, and who gets vaccinated. This will no doubt leave billions of people behind. Pharma companies are putting profit, not people, first. Yet, billions of dollars of taxpayers' money is funding their work. We cannot let the CEOs of a handful of pharmaceutical companies decide our future. We need a vaccine that everyone can have free of charge, no matter where you live or whether you're rich or you're poor. We need companies to share all their research so we can make enough safe vaccines for everyone. We need a vaccine owned by all of us. To end this COVID-19 pandemic, we need to pull together once more.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. In one of our past analysis segments, we talked about gun violence in the United States and President Biden's strategy to combat this. Let's have a look.
President Biden and the Secretary of Justice together visited New York and to deal and discuss strategies to fight gun violence. New York mayor, who used to be a NYPD, New York's police department's captain, he joined them and he agreed with the president. Actually, he said, Mr. President, Eric Adams is reporting for duty and ready to serve. So what can he do? Can we stop the gun violence? It's a part of Americana. Will it be possible? And what are the things he could do? We have someone who studies these things, a professor of law and the director of criminal juvenile justice and racial justice clinical program at the University of San Francisco School of Law, Professor LARA BAZELON. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us what these people can do. I mean, it seems that the mayor and the Secretary of Justice, as well as President, are together on this.
Well, they have their work cut out for them for a number of reasons. As you know, gun rights have expanded in the United States with this conservative majority in the Supreme Court, and they seem poised to strike down some laws that had allowed states like New York to have tighter gun restrictions. What they're saying they're going to do, the Biden-Adams partnership, is crack down on something called the Iron Corridor. And that is actually the I-95 freeway, which runs north to south and is basically accused of being a conduit for illegal firearms coming into states like New York and Massachusetts from states in the South, which have more permissive regulations, or some would say lack of regulations around firearms. So that's one thing they're trying to do. Another thing they're trying to do is pump more money into police departments, state, local, and federal. But I think critics on the left would say that the police already have plenty of money. And as you point out, this gun problem seems to be getting worse, not better. And in part, that's because in the United States, there are more guns than there are people. And the laws around gun ownership are getting more permissive rather than more restrictive.
Well, that was interesting to note that President Biden wanted to throw $500 million at it. Was the absence of money the real problem, which he's trying to fix by providing more money?
I don't think so, honestly. I think that the idea that throwing money at this problem is going to fix it is really not very well grounded, because as you probably are aware, law enforcement in the United States is not lacking for money. The problem isn't that their budgets aren't full. The problem is that the laws that exist allow most Americans to own a firearm, in fact, multiple firearms. And because of the kind of commerce of guns and the number of guns, it's also very easy for the people who aren't supposed to have them to get their hands on them.
What President Biden, I mean, he has been president for a year now. What has he done in reference to gun violence, which he will plan to do now?
Well, he has talked a lot about how it's a major problem. Of course, President Obama did the same, and numerous presidents before them have. And really, basically, as far as I can tell, it is a lot of talk. I'm not really sure that he's been able to put some kind of a federal program in place or really encourage super innovative thinking by states and localities around this issue. I mean, one area where there has been progress is the so-called ghost guns, and trying to crack down on the people who manufacture them and prosecute those people, because of course those guns are not legal. But I think that there's just a greater problem, which is partly about our laws and partly about our culture.
Would you think the culture is dictating laws here?
I'm sorry?
Do you think culture is dictating laws?
I think it's a chicken and the egg kind of issue. I think Americans have always loved their guns. I think until recently, there wasn't a lot of case law interpreting the so-called right to bear arms in the Second Amendment. We have a court now, the Supreme Court, that is inclined to interpret that very, very permissively, and really to discourage states from trying to impose restrictions like requiring people to have a license or requiring people to not carry guns within a certain number of feet of a certain kind of place. You know, we have states where people are bringing guns to church, they're bringing guns to school, they're bringing guns to the supermarket, they're bringing guns to bars. And in a lot of states, that's perfectly legal. And I don't see our government being able to really do anything about that.
President is also calling on a ban on assault weapons. Is that a statement, or is that a strategy which has not been talked about before?
Well, as your listeners may or may not know, we did have a federal ban on assault weapons, and that was put into place in the 1990s. And then it sunsetted that provision, and Congress didn't take that legislation up again. And so we're now in a situation where there really isn't any federal legislation around this question. I think many people would welcome a ban on assault weapons, since it's not really clear to me what a regular citizen needs out of an assault weapon. And of course, they're extremely lethal and dangerous. But I think that's really about getting the votes in Congress to revive that bill. And given the power of the gun lobby and given the sentiment in this country toward gun ownership, I'm not sure that there's the political will or the votes to do that.
Well, there were votes and political votes and all that during the Obama administration. He had the House and the Senate and himself as president. They didn't do much in terms of gun laws. So what is the problem with us?
The basic problem is a resistance to changing the law. And it's really interesting because President Obama's best chance to tighten gun restrictions came after the horrible massacre at Sandy Hook, where 20 children were murdered by a deranged gunman. And that was really this big opportunity to at least have background checks be beefed up, to have certain kinds of gun manufacturers be subject to stricter regulations. And actually, you know, it's interesting that legislation polled very, very well. I mean, it was like at a 90% approval rate by the public. And yet, because the gun lobby was so powerful, and I think they have a hold over many of our elected officials, that bill never made it to the floor, much less passed into law. And I feel like if we can't do anything in the wake of our own children being massacred in kindergarten and first grade, I'm not really sure what the prognosis is other than grim.
You know, you as a professor study that and you teach that. So can you and your students come up with some solution to this nightmare?
That's a great question. I feel like one of the things that keeps me engaged with my job is hoping for a better future for my students. I'm not sure we've handed them such a great situation in so many ways. And yet I feel that my students are idealistic and optimistic and energetic. And also, I mean, in California, where I live and I work and I teach, we do have relatively restrictive gun laws. Now we'll see what the Supreme Court does with a case that's pending in New York that would have a huge impact on us. But I do think sometimes when I feel despairing, I look at my state, and you can say what you want about some problems with California, wildfires, droughts, a potential earthquake at any moment, but we are trying our best to do innovative things when it comes to things like criminal justice reform. And so when I think about my students going out into the world and going to states like mine and other states and spreading those ideas, it does make me feel a little more hopeful.
Now, Eric Adams, mayor of New York, where President and the Secretary of Justice joined him, he clearly wanted more policing when he was running for office, unlike other candidates, and it's not considered quote unquote progressive. Do you think his background being a police officer, he can make anything to make New York City safer with less guns and less violence?
I think he has a real mandate from the voters, and he's a really interesting combination of qualities in that, you know, he's a former NYPD officer, but he's also somebody who was racially profiled and actually beaten by the police. He strongly identifies as a Democrat, but he doesn't want to get pulled too far to the left. And I feel like given all of those interesting mixture of qualities and attributes, he has kind of a bully pulpit right now, especially in the honeymoon phase of taking over as mayor of New York. And so it may be that he's able to do some things both at the state level and advocating nationwide as the mayor of one of the most prominent cities. I feel like the jury is out, though, because, you know, he's so new to this office. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, if a mayor of New York can do a few things, what about the executive orders presidents have? Are there some executive orders which could be crafted in a way that, there's more peace on our streets?
That's an interesting question. You're absolutely right that presidents in our country can exercise authority through executive orders. What's tricky here is that, of course, they're checked. They're checked by the Constitution. And right now we have a court that is interpreting the Second Amendment, specifically around the right to bear arms and own guns, in a way that were President Biden to issue an executive order, he'd have to be careful not to run afoul of.
Well, thank you so much, Professor BAZELON, for your time and for your insight.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
On a final note, we would like to issue a correction. Yesterday, we incorrectly described Rashad Hussain as the U.S. ambassador to India in one of our headlines. Hussein is actually the U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. We apologize for the error. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.